A long, long time ago, our founder Paul Harris said, "This is a changing world and we must be prepared to change with it." And he said that so long ago, and yet it's still to me so relevant today. And so perhaps I'd like to talk a bit about that. For my sins, I chair the Rotary International Strategic Planning Committee, and perhaps I can just touch on a few of the things that I think are emerging as a result of that work. Because I think we do have to change, and we talk a lot about change in Rotary, but it's the how and the speed and the internationality that's where the problems will start to happen. And I think that the fact that it took us it might have been 5 councils on legislation to get youth service or new generation service approved as an agreed degree of service shows how slow and cumbersome our processes are. That is not the speed of a dynamic organisation. 15 years to formally approve youth as an agreed avenue of service. And because we've been annually themed, every year we have a new theme and a new colour coat and everything else, it is very difficult to be long-term planning and strategic when you've got that going on. I mean, I'd be a very rich man if I had $10 for every time I heard someone refer to "in my year," which is what we do in Rotary. We sort of do it a year at a time. So the Strategic Planning Committee believes that it's that annual theme and annual thinking is the biggest impediment to our organisation becoming truly strategic. And I think what's helping us realise that is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have come to our table and brought $355 million with them to help us finish the job with polio. Now, we've been wrestling with polio for 20, 30, whatever it is, years. And so that's not a one-term thing. They didn't come with $355 million and say, use this to lead the way, or use this to build communities in rich continents, that's your one. They did that. We trust you to eradicate polio from the world, and here's our bit. So you see what I mean in terms of the long-term position versus the short-term position has given us some serious corporate alliances and partnerships. Now, I've only been to one council on legislation, and for those that have been to them, I apologise, but the least strategic thing I've ever been to in my life. And at the 2007 council, they approved the strategic plan. If that's not an oxymoron, I'll go, hey, council on legislation approving a strategic plan, but that's what they do. And last year they approved the current plan. Now, Barry Thompson from Sydney chaired the committee that put this plan together, and I now chair it there, so I'm quite happy to praise it. I had nothing to do with it. But they have got a plan now that I think is quite simple, with 3 priorities, and the first of those priorities is to support and strengthen Rotary clubs. And that's a recognition that our activities, our Rotary world is centred entirely on clubs. The second is we want to focus on and increase our humanitarian service. And the third is we're going to tell people what we do. When I came into Rotary in 1987 and had that little secret meeting in my office when the people came and interviewed me, and I'll come back to the rival people, we sort of said, we did all this good work. And I said, wow, how come I don't know about this? I said, oh, no, we don't tell people. We just do the work, but we like to do it anonymously. Well, that's nuts. If we want to attract people to our organisation, we're going to be proud of what we do and tell them what we do. Now, all of those priorities are built on our core values. I have a bit of a reputation for challenging the rules, and I think that's healthy. If you don't like it, that's okay. I appreciate your opportunity to debate that with me. But what we don't debate, what we don't bend, are our principles. We all have our principles, and our principles are not negotiable. That's the same with our core values in Rotary. So when I go on tonight and I'm going to challenge some of the rules, we don't challenge the fact that we're about service, we're about fellowship, we're about diversity, we're about integrity, and we're about leadership. Not negotiable. So the RI strategic plan has adopted those things and recognised those things, and we've started to align it with the budgeting process. We've got an implementation plan together, and we started to make some progress. An example of that progress is the Strategic Planning Committee recommended to the board that we increase the amount of money used for the PR district grants. And the board agreed that we would lift that from $2 million per annum to $4 million US dollars per annum for 3 years, so some future board would have to turn that over. Why did we do that? We did that on the basis, two things. One is for 3 years because PR takes time to gather momentum and get traction. And the second is the board is saying it's the best use of our money if we ask the districts and therefore the clubs to decide how that would be best spent in your regions, because PR in Sydney is going to be different to PR in Cromwell, which is going to be different to PR in Italy, which is going to be different to PR in Japan. So that money has been approved. So it's a $12 million US that RI is putting up for the next 3 years, which will be matched by district money and donations in kind. The staff tell me that grows to about equivalent of $50 million US dollars. So that's a change. Ray Klingers, with President Ray, introduced the role of Rotary coordinators, who are the font of all knowledge in Rotary International programs. And I guess what they're trying to do is to help empower the clubs to be more flexible and be more innovative, because that's what the strategic plan is asking clubs to do. And I'll talk a bit about that later. But I think we need to be prepared to try new things and be prepared to drop old things. And that's something that we sometimes struggle with in Rotary. We're not too bad at the new things, but we don't often drop the old things. And that's why our manual procedure is that thick and our code of policies is that thick. We don't drop anything out. We have tried here in Sydney and in New Zealand and in Melbourne this year to bring districts together for training of the incoming presidents, and that worked to varying degrees in those 3 areas, and I hope it continues. As I said, we're just back from the Philippines, and I think next year we'll have 6 of the Philippine districts working together to do multi-district PETS training up there. So it's just changing and showing club presidents, who are the most important people in Rotary. Bruce, I'm sorry, you are the most important person. we need to put that training and effort into our club presidents. We've got a few other issues. In this part of the world, and I don't know why this is, but our membership, women membership is only about 17%. It's too low. We're lower than many parts of the Western world, and I don't know why that is in New Zealand and Australia. We've simply got to get that higher, and that's a challenge for us. And I think my final sort of point about Rotary clubs is that our growth of membership, which is only important if we're doing stuff, it's only important if we're busy. There's no point in just having people sitting here having a meal and paying dues. They've got to be doing stuff. But pretty much growth is coming from new clubs. And yet in many parts of the world, existing clubs are stifling the chartering of new clubs. And we've got so many options. We've got e-clubs, new generation clubs. You know, at the International Assembly this year, where David and Ann were to be trained, we had this young lady, not yet 30, who's the president of a breakfast club in Minneapolis, address the International Assembly. And she talked about her club, which is only the size of this club, it's less than 40 members but growing. And she said, we have 4 meetings a month, but that's about our only rule. And she said, we don't have that meeting in the same place. We have 2 meetings, we have no meals. We have 2 meetings that are simply program based. We come together and talk about programs. The 3rd meeting is purely a social hour, happy hour, and the 4th meeting is a hands-on project in our community, breaking all the rules. And it's all done on Facebook and Twitter. And so we talked about this at the board afterwards, and I'm using this point to illustrate the difficulty of bringing in change. Because one of the board members said, well, that's all very well and good, Stuart, I see you're promoting that. And I said, well, I am. We need to change the rules so that they're legal. And he said, but how would I do a make-up at that club? And I hate the word make-up. Make-up belongs in the bathroom. It should have nothing to do with Rotary. And I said, well, you would find out where they're meeting. But he said, but the sign on the outskirts of the town, we wouldn't know where they are. I said, well, you become a friend on their Facebook page and you would go there. And of course, he's some distance from being a friend on their Facebook page. But you see what I mean? If we want those sorts of clubs, and I don't say this because I want our organisation to be taken over by Michael McQueen's GMY. I say this because I'm worried. I'm genuine. A real concern, and it would be an absolute tragedy for the traditional work and traditional clubs if that was wasted. The second priority in the plan is to focus on our humanitarian service. Now, I need to tell you that we're that close to eradicating polio. It is really exciting news in India and Nigeria. We are making significant progress this year in those two countries. You know, it could happen in the next couple of years that we beat this thing, and I'm worried that we're not ready. You might say that's a stupid thing to say, Stuart. If we eradicate polio in the next year or two, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation will get significantly better PR than we will because we're not ready, in my opinion. And what's more is, I go around the world looking at Rotary clubs and they're not ready for the membership inquiry that will come from that announcement. Because make no mistake about it, if we eradicate polio, only the second ever disease eradicated from the world, in the history of the world, it's Rotary's work that's done it. It's our volunteer work and our money with our partners that's done it. We will get the publicity if we're going to act together. And I can tell you, because I was on the committee, John Hugo, who's the new General Secretary for Rotary, one of his KPIs is to ensure that we have that PR ready for when that day arrives. Because it is going to be the single biggest event for Rotary, in my opinion, in the history of the whole organisation. So I hope we're getting ourselves ready to fix that, to do that. Third leg of the plan is this area of public image. We've made pretty good progress in this part of the world, in New Zealand and Australia. The New Zealand districts have worked together, doing a variety of PR work and advertising campaigns for some time, and it's starting to happen in Australia. And I hope David's mob, there might be all 22 districts working together, but we're getting pretty close to that, to start to put a unified face to Rotary across Australia, which is happening in New Zealand. But it's really hard to tell what's happening at club level. It's just all over the place, really. But I think there is an understanding that if we expect people in our community to join us and be part of us and understand what we do, we've got to tell them. They're not going to come and find out from us. So I hope we can find a structure that helps club promote their projects and their networking opportunities and tell people what we do. So maybe a couple of personal observations before I sit down and maybe take questions if anyone wants to. I am part of a group on the board that is challenging our annual theme. That will be discussed and maybe it might go away. Maybe we will look back to the future vision plan for the Rotary Foundation and the strategic plan, and that will become the way we move forward. We are thinking much more strategically at the Rotary International board level. There is finally an alignment between that strategic plan and the budgeting process, which hasn't been there in the past, so that's starting to look a little more commercial. So I'm confident that we are at least starting to think a little more strategically. But the big issue is this one, and I don't want a lot of friends this year I talk about this, but this organisation needs to change its culture from one of attendance to one of engagement. I find it amazing, you all joined the service club, and the only thing we measure is your attendance. It's nuts. We've got to find a way of rewarding people and recognising the work that we do. We don't want to encourage knife and fork Rotarians. We want people in Rotary who are prepared to put their shoulder to the wheel and do the work for their community and for the world. So somehow in Rotary we've got to encourage that culture of engagement. Particularly in this environment of at the time poor people. And someone over here just told me of somebody in this club that's set up for 3 months. You know, I need something to do, and that's what we have to do, particularly for our younger people. They want to be engaged, they want to be contributing. The other thing that I worry a bit about is our language. At the International Assembly last year, my very first day at a board meeting, we worked all day and we finished, and the guy sitting beside me said, "Stuart, I've really enjoyed your company. I look forward to enjoying some fellowship with you in the House of Friendship." I look forward to sharing some fellowship with you in the House of Friendship. Anyone else would have said, "Stuart, it's been a tough day, let's go have a beer." Why do we use different language in Rotary than we do in our everyday lives? I mean, we've got to get over that. And I'm not even touching the acronym. Why we do it, I have no idea. So I encourage you all just to use contemporary language, and I'm sure there's no problem with that in this club. And while I'm on my roll, the other thing that I worry about in Rotary is we simply have too many rules. And rules stifle initiative. People use rules to stop progress. You know, if we've got to have all these rules, let's use them to sort things out. for the lawyers not to stop progress. I believe we're better to ask for forgiveness than permission in Rotary, and I firmly believe that Rotary clubs know best what is best for their members and their communities, and that's where we've got to get to. And so many of the rules that we have anyway have to go through that dreadful council and legislation to be changed, so we've got some work to do in there. Because a lot of people in Rotary say, well, Stuart, you've got to have the council because it's democracy. I don't believe it is democracy. We have districts of different sizes, we have different representatives there. It's only past district governors that go there. It tends to be male, pale and stale. And we're going to change that. We simply have to change that if it's going to work. At the October board meeting, I think the most exciting thing we did was we dropped the mission statement and the vision statement from the strategic plan, and we replaced it word for word with a new core essence statement that the students from the Northwestern University of Chicago came up with. They did a lot of research on Rotary, and they came up with a core essence statement. I'll read it to you. It says, it's to define Rotary, it says, we are a worldwide network, and we are, of inspired individuals who translate their passions into relevant social causes to change lives and communities. So again, a worldwide network of inspired individuals who translate their passions into relevant social causes to change lives and communities. That is what Rotary is about. No matter what generation you live in, that's what we're about. Just 3 weeks ago, or whenever it was, with that dreadful earthquake at Christchurch, just north of my hometown, who was the first group organised to be there to help? Let me tell you who it was. It was the university students. 4,000 university students arrived armed with rubber gloves, wheelbarrows and shovels to help. They did that entirely on Facebook and through Twitter. They beat everyone else. Two really important points here. One, the speed with which the social media works to mobilise people, and two, these were under 25-year-old people ready and willing to help to make their community a better place and support it. So don't tell me that young people aren't interested in what we do in Rotary. We've just got to find how to engage them. And I thought that lesson for me was wonderful. And I listened to Zoe and Nicole and Michael and what you talk about how you communicate and how you do stuff and how you put that up on your Facebook pages. We're going to get better at that in Rotary. We only have something like 70,000 people using our Facebook in Rotary and 1.2 million members. So we've got some work to go. So back to my strategic plan and my Northwestern University Chicago students. They used some really neat words. They wrote a big, thick report. You know, they said we were elitist and exclusive and expensive and all those things we knew. But they also clicked on to the fact that our membership was dropping and had some ideas about that. But what they said, just to leave you with, are a few things. One is, they reckoned, their research showed that we underestimate the power of networking within Rotary. They reckon we underestimate the mentoring capacity within Rotary, that we take it for granted in Rotary. Some people say, well, we shouldn't be in Rotary for the betterment of our own businesses. That's cool, but we all have a business, career or life or something, and it might just be that I'm interested in what you do in your work, which might be different from mine. That's still networking. It's me learning from sitting beside you. It's not me selling you a car necessarily. The big words the other word they said, everything you write in Rotary has got this word ethics stamped all over it. Get over it, Rotary. Who's ethics? And they suggest everything we do with ethics is we should replace with the word integrity. Because the ethics of all sorts of people in the world have been seriously challenged in the last wee while, if you think about that. But the big words for me that they used were empowerment. Rotary wants to empower you to be a better friend, a better father, a better mother, a better professional, a better citizen. We need to power up our clubs, they talked about that, and ensure a sustainable revitalisation of our organisation. Whatever's happened, you know, that change will only happen if you and I start. I think it is starting to happen. I think in this part of the world particularly, people are saying, well, let's not talk about it, let's actually do some stuff in our club. So the time to empower and energise and revitalise is now, and to sort of Kiwi eyes Mahatma Gandhi, I just ask you to be the change you want to see. Cheers.
You're not going to get away that lightly. I'm going to open it up if anybody would like to ask any questions of Stuart. Lindsay, please.
Thanks, President Bruce. Stuart, thank you very much. Heard you speak twice now on this matter and I'm on board. Thank you. As District Rugby Foundation Chair, I am just totally frustrated with the problems and delays that we go through trying to get approval for matching grants and district simplified grants. I have two district simplified grants worth $1,500 and $2,000 that have taken 18 months to get the I's dotted, the T crossed, and one knocked back because the budget was out by $17 in somebody's mathematics. Now, I don't know whether anybody here, did anybody here see SBS Dateline last night, what bit on East Timor? Yeah. Here's East Timor. We went in there, bailed them out of 25 years of Indonesian occupation, and the Chinese are in there providing patrol boats, a new Parliament House, and a barracks. And they interviewed the Minister for Defence and they said, how are you getting all this? He said, I just write a letter. I just write a letter to the Chinese ambassador. And it happens. And I've taken 18 months to get a bike repair facility going up in the Central Coast. And, you know, we just got to make it easier. So, thank you. It was not really a question. It was just...
I was going to say, what's your question? I'll answer it by saying, we are negotiating to get Rotary to China. Your frustration is important that we acknowledge, and some of it is the inflexibility of our Rotary systems. Now, I'm not going to apologise for really stringent audit procedures around Rotary Foundation money because it's yours and mine, and we're both very proud that every dollar we put into there gets spent in a project. So the stringent audit procedures and general procedures around spending that money, I will defend. There comes a point in that sort of process that sometimes common sense has got to prevail. And I think in a bureaucratic organisation like Rotary is at that level, we've got to look at how we do that. Now, the bigger fear is the Future Vision Plan, which is going to be rolled out in 2013, was designed to overcome some of these concerns and to simplify Rotary. And we haven't got it right. I promise you we have not got that right. So there's some work to be done on that Future Vision Plan. Your concerns are being echoed by many people, so you're not falling on deaf ears. If you really want to take it further, get to Bill Boyd. He's the Rotary International President, Bill, who's going to be the chairman of the Rotary Foundation Trustees next year, which is the last year before we implement the pilot program. So they're listening and they understand, but there is a gap between that sort of bureaucratic nonsense and common sense.
Anyone else? He's here. Right now, now is the time, now is the place, you are the people.
Well, just a follow-up question, Stuart, sorry. Do you know how much money you're missing out on by not following Lindsay's view? I mean, this district last year did kick in $250,000 into the foundation, another $100,000 into Polio Plus, but it kicked in $400,000 in the shelter boxes. And you go, why? Because you're kicking the money in the shelter box and a green box pops out the end. You're kicking money into the foundation and you go to Lindsay and try and get some money out. Can I suggest to you that if it was, as Lindsay's suggesting, and we're Rotarians who are administering at district level, who might actually be responsible enough to be trusted with the money on the way out, that you might get a lot more money in if those rules were simplified. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. And that's what the Future Vision Plan is about. And in your year as Governor, I'll answer the question if I can. In your year as Governor, you're going to get the money that's raised this year. 50% of it. Not 20% like it's been in the past, but 50% will come back to this district for you to manage and administer. Now, historically, it's been 20%. So if that's not moving towards where you want to be, that's what the Future Vision Plan is about. So my concern would be, I hope you're not holding back your giving this year, because that will impact on the money that's available for you and your clubs to spend in the year that you're going to be Governor. Your point about, it's estimated that clubs spend somewhere between $1 and $1.5 billion outside of the foundation every year around the world. Is that a bad thing? If you want to put 400,000 into shelter boxes, is that a bad thing? That's what I said before. I reckon it's up to you. It's up to the clubs and the individuals. I'm all for it. If Shelter Box is making your wheels spin, then get on and do it. I'm not going to stand here and say that money should go on the foundation. And